our previous discussions, tafadhali, before you come and see this, go watch the others because now you'd understand. It's like a series, you know. So if you miss episode 1 or 2, utaelewa 3. Sijui kama una get. So on stage we have one of our panelists, and I'll allow him to introduce himself before we get into the discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sean. So my name is Samuel Mutemi. I am not a new person here, or I'm a guest twice. Nasikia ukikula mahali mara mbili wewe si mgeni tena. So yeah, glad to be here. The rain, the jam is definitely something, but glad we are able to make it here.
Yeah. So today on our topic is the collaboration. So how is it that the Gen Zs can collaborate with the government on making this nation better? And previously, we've seen feelings being shown on stage, people having arguments, people speaking from their heart on how this government has hurt them. You get? Yeah. So
Fun.
yeah. So let's see. Let's start with this. What do you think should be done next, if at all the Gen Zs should collaborate with the government?
I mean, first of all, let's start at the place where we have to acknowledge that at some point there has to be some sort of collaboration, yeah? Because I don't envision this going on forever. I mean, there has to be a point where we say now, we have to meet at a table.
Yeah.
We have to collaborate and have a discussion about what is going on in the country.
Najua nguvu ya kwenda maandamano is it takes a lot.
It takes a
Kuna
lot.
nguvu, kwanza
It takes a
shouting,
lot. Yeah.
all of that, it takes a lot. But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. It's supposed to. First of all, the maandamano should stop. First of all, Sindio.
I'd say that I wouldn't say right now it should stop.
It should go on.
I want to say that there has to come to a point where it should stop, where it is going to be. Like we're going to have a place, like a finite point,
Yeah.
where we can sit down and then say, now this is where we're going to. Because now the question is, what are we protesting about?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
when those things that we're protesting about become now actualized, that I'd say will be the finite point. Or when we're invited to the table with some goodwill,
Yeah.
I'd say that will be the finite point. I don't see it right now,
Yeah.
because one thing is when you're called to the table,
Yeah.
as I say, there has to be goodwill, yeah?
Yeah, true.
So there has to be like the invitation to come to the table, but also your actions should tell us you're ready to speak.
To speak.
And right now, I don't think we're seeing a lot of that,
Yeah.
particularly because we still have guys being arrested,
Yeah,
others guys being abducted.
Yeah.
And still, I think the death toll is still rising.
Yeah,
So
true.
it's a really tricky situation. That's why I wouldn't want to say that at tumefika mwisho, because you know it's very hard to say that when you see the opposing side doing some other things.
Yeah.
But I'd say there has to be a finite point where we now come and sit down and say, hey, now we need to discuss this thing. Yeah.
Because what I'm understanding is, following the weeks from when we started Maandamano the first time to here, it's like tumeachilia gas kidogo. You get?
Yeah.
Like we've stopped putting in the pressure because we are now seeing the response of the government, if at all I can put it that way.
I mean, yeah, definitely the gas is a bit loose than it was when we started.
Yeah.
And I think it's understandable. You know, people have been on the streets.
Yeah.
People are, tired. If you were taking leave to go for maandamano, now your leave days are over, and your bosses is asking, hey, bwana, how long are you going to be doing this?
Yeah.
Also the energy.
Yeah.
But most importantly, I think there's a fear that has crept into some of the people. And it's understandable because of how some of us have been treated while in Maandamano and all the things that you've seen on X, on the media, and even the fact that the media has been gagged to some extent. So you start realizing that there's some tactics that are being used here that are not very welcoming. So I think that might contribute to why now we are seeing the step down.
So what you're trying to say is that, in short, the system was rigged initially.
I mean, we've always been fighting a rigged system from the days of age.
Yeah.
And I think what we did with the Maandamano and the youth coming out in such large numbers was just to I'd say right now we have scared them a bit. We have scared the system a bit.
Yeah.
But I think in that 1 month, the system, I hope this is not true, but might be reorganizing and realizing, okay, this is how we counter this and this and this. So definitely it's been a rigged system because they have all the machinery. They have the state machinery, they have the security forces. All we have are flags and flowers and our voices, which we have used very well.
Yeah.
But if there's some innovation into what we can use next, that would be welcome.
So we have to improvise, restructure, and re-strategize.
I mean, definitely. If the demands are not met, then the question is, what do we do now?
Because also that was the question of today, like, what now? After we've gone for maandamano, and then they've listened. They haven't fully listened though. So what now? Because also on my end, I'm like, okay, nasikia kuna maandamano Tuesday, Thursday, and the very next thing I'm seeing people are being abducted, and then I'm like, okay, so why you guys either going to the airports or vitu kama hizo? Because I do not understand the whole objective. Because the government has already given a response, but not to the desires of the citizens. And now we've seen different people entering into cabinet and following their scandals. We've had these scandals, and people, I don't know where people are or where people stand at this.
Yeah, I think I'd say the past week or so has been quite demoralizing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Particularly because, when the CSs were, sacked. Was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
There was this glimmer of hope that now we're actually headed in the right direction.
True.
But then the new list came in, and we're like, oh my goodness, this is some of them are reshuffled. Some of them we can publicly, discredit them because of some attributes here and there.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a bit, also it just drowns our hope a bit because it seems as though we are just doing the same things we were doing before. Like you took away a cabinet and you put on probably more or less the same cabinet, in some way.
Yeah.
And so that really demoralized people. And also some other things that have been coming out. You see what the Gen Zs have been doing, and you start to think that, people in government will actually start to do things the right way.
Yeah.
But then during that whole protest, there's another bill that was being passed by Senate. I think it's called the Conflict of Interest Bill. And it was just trying to water down the conflict of interest laws, so that some people in government can be able to, do some, things like trade with their own companies and stuff with that. And so you start to wonder, we've been doing this here, and then this is happening here. Isn't there something tangible that we can see? So I think right now where we're at and why you would still see people on the streets right now is because number one, the things that we wanted to see, we're not particularly seeing.
Yeah.
Of course, we are hearing promises, but we've had promises before. So we can't be swayed by promises right now.
So promises equals lies.
I mean, probably.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it changes.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that there is, some glimmer of hope where we can, you can say something and we can actually anchor on that thing and say that this is actually going to be fulfilled.
True.
But right now we are at a place where we are not really sure. Yeah. So people can say one thing, but we really want to see action. We really want to see 1, 2, 3 things are being moved, so that now we can follow up. I say it's a very dangerous place to be in, where your word means nothing. That,
by the way,
and you can't really tell the people or tell someone something and they can trust you. Because now if you tell them there's a hole and you're going to fall in that hole, even if it's my own life, I won't trust you because, there has been lies before.
True.
So I think it's a very shaky place we are in right now.
So it's more of like actions speak louder than words.
Definitely.
But now your words do not mean anything if you do not act on them.
Yeah.
And okay, so what you've just said is that we have reached this place where the objective isn't met yet.
Yeah.
And we are still trying to push for either... No, now I want to actually divide it into 2 main things, because we started with the finance bill and it got scrapped off. And now we are entering into can I call it the next phase of leadership, where we want to see leaders, like legit leaders, being put into place. And we have seen now the government actually putting people who are questionable into the cabinet. So how can we integrate now the objectives that we want met with the government? Because now you've already talked of a finite point of where now we are yet to reach. So what if we reach there? So what is next after that?
I mean, definitely we reach that finite point where now all the the pending issues have been settled.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining this is a place where everyone who has been arrested illegally has been released, where we have no people who are missing, and justice has been done for the people who actually have died.
Yeah.
So when we reach this particular place and now we can actually come to the table, I'd say, I mean, it's a difficult question, and I'd say at that point, policies are the ones that are going to speak first.
Yeah.
So we need to see a change in policy. And this has to go down to the grassroots of how governance has been done.
True.
And this is definitely going to take a while. I don't think it's something that you can just snap your fingers and can happen.
True.
Something that can be sorted with 1 or 2 sets of policies. I think it's something that will take a while.
Yeah.
But it's important for us to see the fruits, the first fruits just bearing in that particular point. So number one is just policies, and top of them I'd say is probably corruption.
Yeah.
And this whole thing, from the finance bill to everything, has just exposed how much corruption is in the government, particularly in governance, but also in the country itself. And every underlying issue that I feel has been raised, there has been, a hand of corruption that has contributed to that. So if it is money being stolen, so that we are trying to raise more money through taxes so that we can, facilitate other things that we need to do. All this stuff, there's a hand of corruption there. So if we can see that this government is actually trying and putting its best foot forward to fight corruption, I think that is the first thing. That is the first indicator that I would see and say, actually we have a change here. And apart from that, even just the way people approach accountability and the rule of law. So we have a constitution, and it seems as though certain people follow it and certain others don't. And if certain people break it, they go, the consequences are there. But others seem like they can play with it a bit and twist some things here and there. So when we get to a point where we can see that actually the law applies to everyone and we actually follow the constitution, because I really, really believe that this new constitution we got in 2010 is a really beautiful thing. When you look at it and you look at the details therein, it's a really good thing.
Wait,
if
so
it is followed.
umesoma constitution yote?
I have not read all of it, but I have read a good part of it.
Okay. For those of you who have read the Constitution, okay, probably you know if it's a beautiful thing or not, but I'll come clean, sijaisoma Constitution.
I mean, even the first sentence itself will tell you that ideally it's a good thing. We the people. It just says and if you know nothing about it, just know if it starts like that.
We the people.
We the people
okay.
is probably a constitution that works for the people, And when you look at a lot of things that are going wrong, it's not that they're not included in the constitution, although there are things that are not. But it's that it's either not being followed or it's not being enforced. So that's what I'd say.
Okay. So, just to refocus and retract on the whole aspect of collaboration, and I just want to bring in a difference of what we talked about in day one. We talked about examples of leadership, like the leaders that were there in the Bible in the past who actually revolutionized a lot of things. And there's one thing that I picked from there, and that's is it service or servant? Service leadership. And that is something that we haven't really seen in Kenya, because you'd see many leaders who actually enter either into government or into places of power. It would be higher. It's me here, and it's my time to steal. You see?
for
So
sure.
it's majorly that mentality of, once I get into leadership, it's my time to steal. You see? And we've lost that overall objective of, I am in this seat for a purpose and a reason, because leadership also comes from God. You are elected, yes, but it is God's will that actually led you there. You see, it's God's providence that led you there. And when you do not fulfill the purpose or the actual reason as to why you're there, then such things happen. The people come out and speak. You see? So now onto the matter of collaboration. How is it possible that and following what Percy said last week was that we are not even sure whether the Gen Zs who would enter into leadership would either do something better or would actually steal twice more.
Yeah.
You see? So, in what ways can the Gen Zs actually make this collaboration happen?
That's a good question. If I had the full answer to that, I'd be vying for CS chair right now, or some other place in government where I can be there and fulfill everything. But I have a few ideas. But before that, just to mention a few things. I like the way you've mentioned servant leadership. And it's something that has been seen in the Bible. And one thing that has really been eaten in my heart is the fact that I don't think a lot of MPs actually understand their job description. JDs. And it's really important because we were taught this from even when it was called GHC. I was there when it was being called GHC. Social studies. Social studies. That members of parliament are representatives of their particular wards, and constituencies, that is. And right now, when you look at members of parliament, they carry themselves as leaders. I don't think they're leaders. I think they're representatives. And that's the thing. They should be representing the views of the constituents. So when they go to parliament, when there is a bill being passed, you should air out the views of your people.
It makes sense.
So
join the dots.
So you call, if there's a bill that has come, you go, you read it. Because you actually have to read it. Mind you, some of them actually don't read the whole bill. So you hear someone has sponsored the bill, that's fine. But people, the way when you hear the debates, you'll realize that some of them actually have not read the entire bill. So they're not even sure exactly what they're passing, Anyway, that aside. So when a bill comes, you should just, go to your constituents. If you have a framework of how you're going to get views from everyone equally, and then those views that you get, you pass them on to parliament. That's the way it's supposed to be. That is democracy. Now the opposite is happening. So we are electing our representatives. They go to parliament and then they act as if they are deputy principals. So you go there and you start to because now you're deciding what is best for the people. So you go, you sit down and you say, so MPs sit down somewhere and decide what can we do, to bring the country up.
Sometimes I feel like it's them discussing on ways how they cannot actually oppress the people more.
It could be true.
So what can we tax more, or what more can we tax?
I mean, I think it's way more complicated than that, but it might be true. Nowadays I'm not surprised about anything. But more so, I'd say, even if they had like really good ideas, if you think that as an MP I have a really good idea, and this bill is a really good idea, the 240-something of us, or 280-something of us think it's a really good idea, those are just you. Those are 280-something people. You're not representing the views of the people. So it's actually the people who are supposed to accept or deny. And it's your job to actually, sensitize your people, your constituents. So if you think something is good, and you think they are against it, sensitize them on why you think it's good. And that brings about accountability, and it brings about transparency, so that people can be able to see what's happening. So just moving on to your question now, how the collaboration can happen. I think number one is, even as we say that Gen Zs might not actually be better leaders, that I doubt. But if we say that, because we don't have any data to support ourselves,
true.
I'd say number one is the fact that, with what has happened in the past month or so, at least there's a hint of accountability that has come forth.
True.
So now we're sure and we know that people are actually following up on what is happening. If bills are being passed in parliament, the documents are being sent on X. People can go through them. Guys who are lawyers can, break it down for us on X, and we can see 1, 2, 3 things. And there's that sense of accountability, so that it doesn't go unnoticed. We've also seen a lot of whistleblowing on things corruption. So, governors buying flowers for I don't know how much money, wheelbarrows.
There's a crate of soda worth 1 million.
1 million. I want to drink that soda. Hey,
but I want to know, how is one crate of soda worth 1 million shillings?
That's what every Kenyan is asking.
How?
I don't know. But now, you see, the good thing I see about that is that now that such kind of information is coming to light right now.
Yeah.
So before, we probably wouldn't have had these things.
Yeah,
They would have been floating in documents in parliament and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But now this information is coming out, and people, there's some sort of accountability that is coming. Very small, but also very significant. So I'd say, even if it was either Gen Z or whatever generation, whichever leaders are there, they now know at the back of their minds, if I do something, it's going to come out at some point.
True.
And I'm going to be accountable for it. And my hope is just that the accountability framework in the Kenyan government can really grow to a point where we know that ukiiba utashikwa, ukishikwa something will happen. Because now, the thing that encourages people to steal, because the Bible says our hearts are deceitful above all else. So, hata mimi nikiekwa kwa serikali, and then I'm just seeing billions passing.
Why not?
Sometimes it might come to my head to put my hand in.
Acha tunchukue kidogo
tu.
Hakuna mtu mwenye atajua.
But then comes in the principle of the carrot and the stick. That when I do something bad, there are consequences that follow. But you see, these guys, they're in a place where consequences don't really, it's not even a thing there. You see, so
it's actually become a norm that when you do wrong, it won't actually surface up.
It won't surface. So it becomes a whole other issue. So I believe if we are able to bring up that accountability thing, it will really help. And then in that way, because even the things that we are raising right now as Gen Z are not things that are specific to us as a generation. It's just something for the entire nation. So if we're able to get an accountability framework, I think we'll be able to really go for places, and our objective will be met.
So out of what you've said, I think I'm going to pick 3 things because we're about to go for a short break. Number 1 is that whole aspect of representatives being the missing link between the people and the government. So I feel like that leaders should have this, can I call it an open mic, where people would come air out their views or even inputs on how leadership should go, on how governance should actually be done. And with that, actually push it up to parliament or to the government. And I think probably the government has missed out on the people's input, because it's always been about I will make this decision, whether the people like it or not, they won't do anything. And I think even we as Kenyans have slacked on that point on now the second point, accountability, where if there is bad governance, if there is bad leadership, we are just fine and okay with it until it reaches that point where it actually stings us. You see, where it stings us, and then now we are forced to actually
go out.
So I feel that is also something that is wrong with our end. And finally, the third thing is that leaders also need to wake up and do what they're supposed to do. And that comes with that whole aspect of if I am placed in a position of power, then I should do as expected. I am supposed, I have a responsibility, I have a duty to do. Therefore, I have to do it, one way or the other. So these are 3 things, but let's just stop there, kidogo, then we'll go for a short break. But don't go away. Feel free also to comment. Feel free to tell us your views and opinions. I think there is a WhatsApp number just down there, hapo. So just tell us, and we'll be back.
na ibada yangu nakupa wewe Bwana.
To get Wewe ni Mungu by Evelyn Wanjiru as your Skiza tune, SMS the word Skiza 88300028 and send to 811. Hope Skiza, spreading the hope.
Sijaona kama wewe umepigana vita zangu, nakupa ibada ya moyo wangu usiku wa leo.
Thank you for choosing Hope TV, the channel that brings you hope, entertainment, and inspiration. We value you and would like to serve you better. Talk to us by scanning this QR code on your screen or go to our social media page at Hope TV Kenya and click on the survey link by the name Hope TV Survey. It will just take a few minutes but means the world to us. We value your feedback. Hope TV, look and live. Thank you for choosing Hope TV, the channel that brings you hope, entertainment, and inspiration. We value you and would like to serve you better. Talk to us by scanning this QR code on your screen or go to our social media page at Hope TV Kenya and click on the survey link by the name Hope TV Survey. It will just take a few minutes but means the world to us. We value your feedback. Hope TV, look and live.
Welcome back to our discussion. We are doing so great, and thank you for your response. Thank you for your feedbacks. So now we are going to hop on how can the generations actually collaborate, you see. And we're just doing like a bit of discussion, and something came into mind. One thing we have to recognize is that the Gen Zs, the Gen Alpha, these people who are coming are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. And the leaders we're seeing now, they wouldn't be in leadership forever. Yeah. So let's now start with how can now, be it millennials and above, pass down the knowledge and the information that they know to the leaders of tomorrow?
Yeah, I think it's an important question. Definitely, because the way you've seen, we are humans. We only, on this land for a while.
Yeah.
And when our time is gone, when we start retiring and go to our shambas back at home, someone has to take the reins.
Yeah.
I think number one is just to have candid discussions.
Yeah.
in a cross-generational, can I call it that, platform or forum. So you'll find that nowadays getting such forums is not very common, especially when it comes to matters leadership. Of course, I know a few forums that try to mentor young people, Gen Z, Gen Alphas, and mentor their leadership, but it's not as widespread as you'd want it to be. So we'd want to see a bit more of those programs come in, you know. Probably, you know, members of parliament, senators, governors, people who have performed well.
Performed well. Mind you, performed well.
Yeah, because we also don't want the negative type of information to flow down.
True,
you know, hatutaki ukuje uambie msee vile ya kuiba. That is just detrimental to us as a people. But if, you know, we have a governor or just some sort of leader who has, you know, performed in their slot, they could start a mentorship program, apprenticeship program, you know, and start doing these things. Even probably, you know, even start it while they're in office, even before they retire. So maybe a governor on a certain Friday can say, you know, pick like 5 youths, whichever criteria you use, and maybe they go with you, and they just shadow you everywhere you go, and just see how things are done and try to nurture them. People who probably have an interest for politics and governance. I think that would be important. I've seen it done in other careers, you know, doctors and stuff like that, engineers. But I think in leadership there's a gap there. It's done, definitely, but not as profoundly as we'd want it to be there. So I think that's one way we can flow it down. And also, just another way is that also these performing governors can just write books and memoirs, so that people can read and follow up on them. I think that would be really nice, because I know a lot of people read novels. When you walk in town at night, kitabu na mia, kitabu na 50.
I can speak for half of the Gen Zs that actually don't read. That is very wrong. But people should read.
They should read.
You know, okay. There is this joke that I had that if you want to hide information from Kenyans, hide it in books.
In books. It's so true. It's so true.
But guys, please develop the habit of reading books. I mean, there is a lot of information that is in books, and we haven't actually opened the pages to realize these books. So I get what you're saying.
I think it's important. And if you know, books are big, you can start with articles. You know, just read articles here and there. And you really see a lot of information. And I think that's another thing. And if they really want to touch the youth, the way you've said, maybe some of them don't read books. I don't know what they're called, but they're memoirs you can do as videos. It's like a I don't know what it's called. It's like a documentary of yourself.
Exactly. Or you could have probably like an open panel and actually record it. Because right now everything is being transitioned to online and all of this stuff. Sure. So probably host panels and then from there actually record it. That could actually be, how do they call it? E-libraries. E-libraries.
I think that would be good. And also one thing that I think was being done a while back, I don't know why it stopped, is going to a baraza. You know, barazas, where a leader comes and just people from all over come, and then now we can discuss from a very level point. You know, you're just seated there, and me, a leader, I'm seated here, and you can ask me questions about governance, and I can tell you why we are doing things that we are doing. I think that would be really important. I think so. That also improves the flow of information. I guess from either top leadership to the people, and also the people back to top leadership. Because I think if people had barazas, some things would not fly. Because you'd know that nilienda hii baraza and people actually do not like this idea. Because I've seen that actually some of the things that government officials and people in top governance are thinking, there's a big disconnect between the people and them. So even the way we have been saying and been shouting, you see, that we don't want the finance bill and other things, when it goes to top governance, the way they respond to us, it's like they've been hearing a different story. It's like you're not hearing what we are saying. And sometimes we want to think that, hey, these guys are just ignorant. But I think there's ignorance, yes, and arrogance. But I think there's also a communication, gap somewhere there.
Something that's called broken telephone.
Broken telephone, definitely. And I had someone talk about this in an interview, just a lady on a news channel somewhere. And she was just saying something about our generation being taught different from their generation. And so maybe that's where the difference comes in. I don't know, but I'm sure there's a communication deficit somewhere.
So I think we have to have this whole interest. I can also put in interest of the people with leadership. Because even me back in my day, whatever the government did, it never bothered me. And now actually seeing that it matters and our voices are being heard, we also as the people should actually take interest. Now, you've already talked about having barazas, having just a sit down, reading books, this information to be passed down to the leaders of tomorrow. So, how is now a person of interest, probably a Gen Z who has the interest in politics, be molded or be shaped in that whole aspect of, if God has actually put me in this position, how can it be effective in now either stepping out or trying to occupy these spaces? Because one thing I do know is that people, so many Gen Zs, or not so many, but there are some of you who are actually called into these spaces of politics, but they are either afraid or they somewhat want to conform to the pattern that is already there. So how can such a particular youth or Gen Z can actually have the right motive and direction into entering these spaces without conforming to the pattern that is already there?
I think it's a question of purpose mainly. I'd like to put it that way. There's something I had being said recently, that there are some professions, can I call them that are empty just because there's a certain stereotype about them. So for example, we don't have as many people as we should have, wanting to be MPs, wanting to be, for the right reasons, of course. Yeah, someone who just wants to bring about change, someone who just wants to bring about, transformation. Some of these people are doctors right now because they went to do med. Yeah. Why? Because they were told politics is a dirty game. And you had stories all over. Yeah. And so you decided, hey, let me go be a doctor, an engineer, and stuff like that. So you might be doing what you're doing well, but it's not your passion. Yeah. I think it's a question of purpose. Like when you realize what your purpose in this life is, then you go at it with everything you have. Sometimes we wonder why Nelson Mandela would ever agree. Okay, you don't agree to be imprisoned. But, put yourself in that path.
Yeah.
That that things might happen to you, And most of the time when you're doing this, you're doing it against a Goliath of some sort, yeah? So they have, bigger guns than you, they're just basically bigger than you. And the only thing that can actually motivate you to do that is purpose. Yeah. So I'd say purpose would be it for people who are actually called to that space. To be leaders, to be change makers. I'd say that's purpose. But also to realize that each individual is not where you are for nothing. Yeah. Like there's a reason why you were born in Kenya. There's a reason why you are this age right now. Yeah. You're in the place where you're in. There's a reason for everything. So to understand that, number one, your voice actually matters, I think is really, really important. Yeah. I was being given an illustration that the reason people were so many in the protests in CBD was just because one person made their own choice to come to CBD. True. Yeah. True. So I made a choice, someone else made a choice independently, and then we all converged at CBD. Yeah. And we were so many of us. Yeah. You'd think that it was a collective decision, but ideally it was an individual decision. Yeah. True. For someone to feel that small space that they usually feel, and to make that crowd look big. So I think it's just that we know that we have a voice and it needs to be used. Yeah. The reason people might not be, up in arms about what is going on, or might be apathetic about it and saying, you guys go fight me, nitaka hapa ni watch movie, is maybe because they don't understand. Ama they watch you on Twitter. Najua ujamaa kwa hapo namjua. It's probably because they don't understand how it affects them. Yeah. And it's true, even earlier, I'll be honest, I was never really adamant about these things until I got my first pay slip and wondered where 30% goes to. And you see, when it starts to bite you, then you start to realize everything that happens is actually going to bite you. And so you have to speak out about it. I think that's it, to realize that we're actually affected by everything that happens. So if they want to raise taxes, that's definitely going to affect you. And I think that's the most obvious thing. But generally, even just corruption in government, at some point it's going to lead to hike in taxes or just something. Insecurity. tunaambiwanga ukisikia neighbor wako ameibiwa, wewe anza kupack mizigo, si ndio?
Yeah.
Because you're probably
Yeah,
next.
yeah.
So even just keeping, that nyumba kumi security
Yeah,
thing where
yeah.
you see something weird and you say, hey, this is not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So
You
that
speak
you
out.
you speak
Yeah,
out,
yeah.
because if it happens to your neighbor, it's probably going to happen to you.
To you next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to think that it's just going to happen to your neighbor alone, I think that's delusional.
Yeah.
We all live in one Kenya.
Yeah.
And the same road I use from Mombasa Road to CBD is the same one you'll use back from CBD to Mombasa Road.
Mombasa Road.
Everyone will use that road.
Yeah.
So to want to know how our funds are being used is
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
And then again, ideally, we are the generation that if we've not started, we are starting to think about families, settling down,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
And kids coming into play.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
want kids, that is,
Yeah.
this generation of us now,
For those of you that are called into celibacy, amen.
called into celibacy, might be easier. But if you want kids, you're also going to bring up your kids in this
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you want to know that you're bringing up in the best environment. And lastly, I just like to say, be a part of something huge. Be a
Yeah.
part of something that matters.
To actually make an impact.
To make an impact.
Yeah.
Imagine, because this protest happened, imagine now maybe 10, 20 years from now, we have our kids, and me who never went to, I did, but just giving an example.
I also did.
But giving an example,
Yeah, yeah.
me who never went to protests,
Yeah.
and a brother of mine, let's say, Yushon,
Yeah.
you went to protests,
Yeah.
and your kids are there, and you've told them the stories of the protest, and me, my kids know, hey, this guy, either from the mother or someone, they told them, hey, this guy was at home. Sindio? And then the kids are discussing and wondering,
Yeah.
why didn't my dad fight for freedom?
Yeah.
Why was he apathetic to some things?
Yeah. Yeah.
Some things we do right now actually going to affect us in future. And so your kids might not see you as, courageous or anything.
True.
Yeah. Just to be able to tell your child and show them a
Nilikuwa
photo.
maandamano.
Nilikuwa
Nilipigwa tear
maandamano.
gas.
Hey, I fought for what I believe in. So even you fight for what you
Yeah,
believe in.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a very important thing to remember.
Yeah. So nasikia time yetu imeisha, but I just want to touch on something specific. There's one trend or thing that we haven't really noticed, and is that whenever there's good governance or good leadership, the nation and the people actually thrive. They're happy. And clear example, you mentioned Nelson Mandela. South Africa was in a good state as of that time. Okay, just shifting over the whole apartheid and everything that happened there. There was, when Nelson Mandela came into leadership, there was actually peace and tranquility that actually sad in South Africa. But when you look at, and this is actually a forewarning to the people who actually want to enter into the spaces of leadership. If you have an aim to probably do away with the old patterns and the old norms, then leadership then the people are actually going to be happy. There's going to be peace. But when you have an aim of, now it's my time to shine, then that's where now what you see happening happens, you see. So if there is bad governance and bad leadership, the people will cry out, you see. So in just one word or two, we've talked about collaboration and time yetu imeisha. Just one word. In terms of collaboration and Gen Zs trying to enter into these spaces, what would be your final advice to people who are actually aiming or having that desire to enter politics? Just one word or two.
I just say legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And a statement just to explain that is
Yeah.
just think about what people will remember you for.
Yeah.
A lot of guys look for money because it's, instant gratification
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you have status at that moment.
Yeah.
But we still speak about Kibaki's free education right now. We still speak about Kibaki's road network right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and people are crying out wondering, where can we get another Kibaki from?
Yeah.
So I think it's always to think about what legacy are you leaving? Will your name be uttered 20 years from the time you die?
Yeah.
You change people's lives. Nelson Mandela, what he did and what he fought for touched every single person's life in South Africa.
Yeah.
Because at that time, when they were going through apartheid, when that thing, started to crumble, it changed so many lives.
True.
Where you go, where you eat, where you do what, how you sit in the bus,
Yeah.
all that stuff changed.
Yeah.
So I think it's just think about your legacy.
Yeah.
Think about what happens when you're gone.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest gift you can give, not just yourself,
Yeah.
to generations. You know,
Yeah.
you can say, my great-great-grandfather was Kibaki, and people can remember, oh, Kibaki did
Yeah,
this.
Kibaki actually
You
did
know,
this.
Yeah. So it's
And it's
just,
actually in the social studies books for those of us that were in.
yeah, for
these-
sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's legacy.
Yeah.
Legacy. Yeah.
Yeah. So Meskia, legacy, and if you really want to enter these spaces of leadership, tafadhali, do what is right, and it has to start from that aspect of where is your heart, and number two, are you leading as God leads? Sawa. So I've been your host / moderator. Thank you, Sam, for being there
Always a
and
pleasure.
sharing your views. And we shall see you next Friday. But thank you. It's also a blessing to see you guys. So peace.